Every nation in creation has its favorite drink. France is famous for its wine, its beer in Germany. Turkey has its coffee, and they serve it blacker than ink. Russians go for vodka, and England loves its tea.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Tea and Toast with me, Lewis Bennell, and my good friend David Pinner. In this week's episode, we wanted to talk about eSports. For anyone who doesn't know what eSports are, it's basically the competitive side of multiplayer games that are either televised or streamed online. eSports is a big deal at the moment for a lot of publishers and developers because it offers huge exposure for their games. Four of the biggest eSports titles are League of Legends, Dota 2, Counter-Strike and StarCraft 2. They attract hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers around the world, and tournaments offer millions of dollars in prize pools. Even though watching these games is a big deal to a lot of fans, eSports has never really taken off in the mainstream press. Although gaming websites tend to cover tournament finals, the rest of the matches are unheard of, unless you actually follow a specific player or a team. Unlike most sports, eSport as a concept currently lacks a governing body or any set standard when it comes to leagues and teams. This tends to leave publishers and developers all vying for their own slice of the pie when it comes to publicity, sponsorship and potential revenue. At the moment there's no evidence as to how profitable eSports is for hosts, but it certainly offers big bucks for winning teams or players. Dota 2's prize pool is often in excess of $10 million, with it commonly supplied by microtransactions that players make in-game. Unsurprisingly, and when money becomes involved in sport, corruption isn't far away. Despite being in its infancy, eSports has already had its fair share of team scandals. Whether it's match rigging or rogue bets, there have been plenty of these types of stories in the news. It's not good publicity, and it doesn't particularly instill faith that competitive gaming can become a serious player in the entertainment industry. The point of this week's Tea and Toast is for me and David to explore what eSports means to us as gamers and the wider gaming public. I suspect we've probably got similar views on the subject, but as an individual who enjoys watching some eSports but dislikes the culture, I think there's plenty for us to talk about. So David, do you think eSports has long-term survival?
I don't think that in its current form it's sustainable for an extremely long period of time. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, but I don't specifically think that, at least in the form that we know it as now, it's going to stay this specific way. I personally can't get into it the same way I get into sports. I don't even like sports, and it's hard for me because at the Smite World Tournament, I was very, very interested in all of the teams and all of the excitement, and then, a week or two afterwards, everything that had built up for that tournament, all the teams, everything broke apart, and now it's, new teams, new everything. Whole new set of people playing and all of that, and it's hard to have long-term engagement over something where there's a new name and a new team every 5 seconds.
So do you think that's part of the problem, is the fact that it feels a little bit fickle in the sense that teams will have success and continue for a period of time, or if their success is limited, or if they're unsuccessful, they'll quickly fold, find new players, reform and re-enter tournaments, and so there's that disconnect between viewers and the teams themselves?
Definitely, 100%. There is very little interest for a lot of people, I believe. There's no... Like right now, if you go watch baseball, there's the Atlanta Braves. If you go and watch football, there's, football teams. There's things that you can latch onto, you can follow, you can see the stats for. There's players with long-term careers. There's teams that do bad for years. They aren't successful, and then, they keep recruiting and slotting in new players, and then, one year they knock it out of the ballpark.
Because I think, from my perspective, as someone who enjoys sports and esports to a certain degree, I think the biggest obstacle at the moment is simply the fact that the landscape of esports and the teams changes so much. Take a worldwide team such as Real Madrid. Their fans will forever support that team, irrespective of the nucleus of players that are on that team. And certainly what I've seen of esports is the fact that if a team has success, they will stay together as this small group. But the moment they don't have success, they will simply fold and reappear under a different name with different players. And it would be as if Real Madrid, if they didn't win a trophy one year, just packed up their bags, came back as an entirely new team, and in the process they'd alienate their fan base and the people that previously used to follow them. And I think that's the biggest obstacle, is the sense that even though it's a very hardcore niche thing at the moment, it still has millions of viewers on things such as Twitch. It lacks long-term passion, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to be engaged at the level that esports needs people to be engaged at if there is such high turnover.
So what do you think? What do you think is the opinion of the general gaming audience on esports? Because, like I've just mentioned, there are millions of players that take that take to Twitch to watch, whether it's Smite, Dota 2, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and various others in between. What do you think the general audience who don't play esports or know little of them, what do you think is actually holding them back from actually watching them like they would a football match or a rugby match or something else?
I think it's two completely different demographics. I think the people that watch games on Twitch aren't necessarily people who play games. I think that Twitch is answering a question of YouTube, which is the sort of like the PewDiePie question, which is people like to watch other people play games, right? Like, a lot of people go to other people's houses, they don't play games, they watch other people play games. And so I think that the people that watch Twitch is just an extension of the millions and millions and millions of people that watch people play games on YouTube, like, PewDiePie and Markiplier and Game Grumps and all of them. So I don't specifically think that there's anything that esports could do to draw the attention of gamers and of themselves, just because there is this giant disconnect between a Twitch community and a gaming community, right? And in that same light, I definitely feel like esports, and it goes back to the first question, would have to double down on creating an identity, creating passion and engagement, and having these teams so that people who aren't specifically, people that consume hours and hours and hours of Let's Play content, like it's the Orange is the New Black, can start getting engaged with it, because until then it's just people playing games. Esports is literally people playing games, and people watching esports is people that like to watch other people play games, which is probably why turnover doesn't specifically bother them so much. But I do think there will be a point of saturation where people will get tired of seeing the same games being played over and over and over again.
I think for me that it feels like it lacks infrastructure. Where someone can follow football, and there's set leagues, there's set teams, there's set amount of matches played, there's a governing body, sponsorship adheres to the rules of that governing body. It all feels at the moment like one big melting pot where people are clawing for attention of their game and their teams and their esport. And I think in some respects that alienates the general gaming audience, because they don't know where to begin, they don't know where to go, they don't know which website is the official overseer of, say, Dota 2 or League of Legends or Smite. And while they can certainly go to that respective game's website, none of it really feels official enough as an environment. And I think in that respect, it's probably what puts most people off. And I think the other side of it is the fact that many of the games that are successful as esports, such as Dota 2, are incredibly niche, and the games themselves and the environments are quite toxic. So at a game level, you can't just look at Dota 2 and think, oh, I'll go and try that, learn a bit about it, and then go and watch the games being played live on Twitch, because the curve to actually taking part is really high. The knowledge that you need to know about the games, the heroes, and the skills is even higher. So the barrier of entry is so high that I think even though there are millions of people watching, it's still incredibly niche at the same time.
I 100% agree, and yeah, exactly. The games are very hard to get into nowadays, considering there is this. That's one thing I think is a very big negative for esports, for the gaming community, is that esports makes these games so competitive that unless you're some kind of 360 no-scope pro, you're not going to be able to really enjoy these games, because people are just going to tell you you're bad because you haven't watched 300 hours of Twitch streams and you can't click a million miles an hour. The casual aspect of these games is dying rapidly because they're just competitive games, and everyone wants to be one of these esport pros.
Yeah. So lastly then, to finish off, what's your thoughts on the future of esports?
I think that either the NFL of esports is going to have to come and regulate the entire industry, and one of these identities, either it's Red Bull, MLG, Riot in of itself, someone is going to have to regulate it universally and start setting standards. Or I think that it's just going to whittle down to a bunch of people that just like watching people play video games. I don't see the big tournaments and the big prize pools continuing to happen 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, for me, I think it will reach the stage where the sponsors that are filling the coffers of these prize pools realise that the returns are simply not worth it, and even though there is a gaming audience, that its worldwide appeal to casual viewers simply isn't there, and people only sponsor events such as esports needs because they want to be reciprocated in some way, and they want people to either play their game or buy their product, and I don't think it's necessarily working, and because of that I think there's every likelihood that the esports environment, unless something official comes in and some official body begins to govern its deployment and the infrastructure of it, that it will simply stagnate, and it will settle on a nucleus of a player base that watches it and supports it, but it'll never grow any bigger because of that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So that's it for this episode of Tea and Toast. If you've liked what you've heard, please do hit the subscribe button or leave a comment below. If you want to contact me or David personally, you can reach us on Twitter, and we'll try to get back to you as quick as possible in 200 characters or less. We'll see you next week.
Every nation in creation has its favorite drink. France is famous for its wine, its beer in Germany. Turkey has its coffee, and they serve it blacker than ink. Russians go for vodka, and England loves its tea.